Screen Radar presents Film Dorks.
Hey guys, welcome to Film Dorks, podcast number 18, and we're going to talk about paranormal movies, scary ghost stories.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's going to be really spooky. But I'm Nick.
I'm Bridget.
I'm Tom.
I'm Lucas.
And I'm Dirk.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us, Dirk.
Dirk Marshall is joining us in today's podcast. So, Lucas, why don't you give us a little spiel about the ghost story?
Yeah. So
should we talk about Dirk first?
Yes, I'm going to introduce Dirk because I know everybody because we went to college together, and Dirk actually I know from Portland, from working together a little bit, also just from the social circle. But when I met Dirk, it was honestly, I finally met somebody who had a deeper knowledge and understanding of cult movies, weird movies, horror movies. And if you look at behind Dirk, became quick friends because we just had such simpatico when it came to films and filmmaking. So Dirk, give a quick bio of yourself.
Yeah, so I have sort of a strange upbringing. I was raised in a video store. My father had 3. And I grew up in one of them, just running down the aisles of everything you see behind me that was available in the 80s and 70s. And I could just grab anything I wanted off the shelf at any time. And I had a little portable VCR underneath the table with a blanket over it. And I could just pop in, Critters 2 or whatever. And that was like my education and most of my friend circle for a long time growing up.
Nice.
Yeah, it was kind of strange. And then I just lost track of it. I never thought it really was unique or anything because as a kid that's your experience. And then my friend and the producer of my podcast VHS gave me Thomas Hodges' book of video covers, and I opened the book and it felt like walking into my home. It was like a visceral response to the cover of Wanted Dead or Alive or something. And so I was just I got to start a podcast. So I started VHS, and the premise to keep me limited is each episode is about a film, but the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. So if I want to talk about Dead Heat, I have to find a police officer that'll watch Dead Heat and then sit and talk with me about the film and about what it's like to have that profession. So it's pretty fun. And the seasons are just 8 episodes because it's so labor intensive, but it's very fun.
I'll say as movie podcasts go, I'm kind of burnt out on so many of them because it's all just talking about movies, and Dirk's is always refreshing. Whenever his pops up, I like listening to it because he has such a unique approach to the material. So anyway, today's program is about supernatural movies. So this is going to be almost like a history lesson because when I started doing a deep dive on this episode, we were going to just do a one-off instead of doing episodically, the early years, the later years. So, but what I started finding out is that, early supernatural movies like ghost stories can date back all the way to A Christmas Carol, which is considered kind of one of the first ghost stories because he has the ghosts of Christmas, future and past, and which I don't know if people tend to really think of it that way or consider it a ghost movie, but the ghosts are kind of an integral part of it. But at the same time, so that was in 1938, which was I think the first iteration of A Christmas Carol. At least that's the one my in-laws own on DVD. And then after that, there was The Uninvited in 1944, which is this couple moves into a mansion in England and it's haunted. It's not necessarily scary. It's more especially at that time, a lot of the movies that were being created around that were more romantic, gothic romances. There was some little thrills in it, but they just, it's not like it was the monster movies of the time. And then, what is it called? Carnival of Souls came out in, House on Haunted Hill is the one that Tom is going to review today for us, but that came out in 1959 with Vincent Price. And then I think that's kind of considered the original one that was the haunted house movie that really kind of, and that was based off of, if I'm not wrong, loosely based off of The Haunting of Hill House, which was the novel. But anyway, so we're going to watch that trailer and then Tom's going to talk for a bit about that. Hold on, let me find it.
Vincent Price, and you're invited to my party in the house on Haunted Hill, where so far the ghosts have murdered only 7 people. So won't you come and make it 8? You'll see human heads without bodies. Mysterious pools of blood dripping from the ceiling. The walls move slowly in against you. Don't try to escape, you can't. You ready, dear?
No.
Are you ready, dear?
Yes, damn you.
The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me in the house on Haunted Hill? Hurry, or you'll be late for your own funeral.
I mean, I just love Vincent Price so much. He's Vincent
Yeah,
Precious.
there's an if Vincent Price is in a movie, it's got to be creepy, right? That's the idea.
That's kind of his shtick, yeah. But so yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Tom, tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, I mean,
No.
it was a Castle film. It was like in the late 50s, early 60s. There was this glut of like gimmick movies that came out that had all kinds of like just sort of things to try and get people to come to the theaters, and they would make all these like crazy proclamations. Like some of them offered like $1,000 life insurance policy in case you died of fright while you watched the movie. This particular one had this thing where they would put a skeleton on a wire and like sort of run it through the theater when the whole big finale happened, and it stuff like that ended up becoming a gigantic financial success for these guys, and so much so that Alfred Hitchcock actually saw this trend, and that's what got him to make Psycho ultimately.
So has everybody else seen this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
I watched it for the first time today.
Oh, you did? What were your impressions, Bridget?
I really liked it. I thought it was quite entertaining. I had no expectations going into it, honestly. But the whole time when I was watching it, like I know we're gonna get into it, but like the sound and everything, don't flame me for this, but I kept thinking it reminded me of like the original Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Yeah.
That's like that's all I can think of, which I love those. So
No,
I really enjoyed it.
I think this movie, amongst a handful of others, is basically what Scooby-Doo was lampooning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because there were so many of these movies that came out at that time. There was just like gigantic swell of like cheap movies for like all these teenagers that they found out had money, and like drive-ins and all that kind of stuff. And so there was a flood of these movies that are really cheap, and this one's no exception in the cheap department. I mean, there's the first couple of scares you see, which actually turn out to be fake out, which is pretty funny, are literally just an old woman that this poor young girl is just terrified of. But when they show her like first appear, you can clearly see like that she's on some kind of a cart in the background. And then they sort of like wheel her by later.
I thought
on.
you were going to say you can clearly see she's on some kind of chemical. It's
No,
like
no.
Totally wasted.
No, that's you. No, and then later on, there's like a head that
Vincent
gets,
Price
like,
carries
pretty
around.
prominently displayed. Yeah, I mean they show like a close up of it, and it's like paper mache or something.
Yeah.
It looks like a junior high level art project. That said, I mean, there's not a whole lot of plot going on here. If you've never seen this movie or heard of it, the basic idea is there's an eccentric, macabre millionaire guy who has a wife that he ambiguously hates for some reason. And they set up this party where 5 people get invited to stay the night at this haunted house. And if they successfully live through the night, then they all get $10,000 apiece. And the rest of the night plays out where, you know, you think the house is haunted, and then stuff happens.
Yeah, but that's that is scene is loosely based off of the Haunting of Hill House, right? Where they have the people who have to come in there and spend. The difference being, which we'll get into a second, I guess, because Nick, you're going to review that one. But it is such, I think, the reason why I chose this one, and also Tom eagerly chose to review both, which I was happy with, because this was remade later. But this is like the quintessential haunted house movie. Like, right, you have to come into this haunted house, and it's literally like walking through what's it called, like a house on Halloween, right? Like all these jump scares and things. And so for me, like, yeah, it's not the greatest film. It definitely hasn't aged well either, but it is something so freaking charming about it because it has all those little elements, and it has Vincent Price. So like, even though it's not like it's the least bit scary, I did think it was definitely worth chatting about.
It's not scary, but it's pretty amazing how misogynistic it is. Because like the whole thing turns into like this double cross murder plot thing, and the whole basis of the murder plot is that basically like they hold it as fact that women are either like whores or just like hysterical dingbats, and they literally use the word hysteria several times in the movie. And then like the psychiatrist guy like is like chucking around sedatives at everyone, and everybody's drinking and smoking, and white is the driven snow. Like it's so late 50s. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good segue, though, from going from that into the next movie, which is The Haunting, that came out. When did this? So The Haunting came out in
1963.
And before, I did mention Carnival of Souls, which is another one that I would have wanted to watch and review on this episode. It's not entirely like a ghost movie in the same way, though. So, and also, since you've never seen The Haunting, Nick, I wanted you to watch it, because this is like a year. We watch this one every year, my wife and I, during Halloween. So anyway,
I just had one thing to add to the Vincent Price conversation that you might find interesting, is that Vincent Price was the first person I ever saw in a Scooby-Doo cartoon that was a real person. And, you know, being in a video store as a child, I then found this movie and was like, was this, and there's another early Vincent, anyway, it's not important, but since it was a real person, I thought all of the people in Scooby-Doo were real people. And so then I went looking for like Fred in movies and stuff. And like, I was like, is he Fred Williams? He's not him. And then like, I just had to like, you know.
Did you ever find him?
No, I didn't, but I felt pretty
Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah. It took a while, but yeah.
God damn it, now you're making me think we should have reviewed Scooby-Doo when we get to the 90s. Maybe we'll do a whole Scooby-Doo episode. Who knows? Okay. All right, so we're going to watch
that.
We're going to do the trailer for The Haunting, the 1-minute trailer.
The Haunting?
Yep.
Tonight the dead will walk, and you, unbeliever, will scream unheard.
Stop it!
The Haunting. What do we really know of that other world of hauntings, of apparitions in the night, of the sinister powers of darkness? The Haunting was produced and directed by Robert Wise, the brilliant producer of West Side Story, and stars Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson, Russ Tamblyn. You cannot deny terror. You cannot look the other way. You have to face the supernatural, face the chilling mysteries of forces you cannot understand or control, when The Haunting holds you in its spell. The Haunting.
So, Nick, what were your first impressions watching this, since this was your first viewing?
Well, you know, like, I mean, this one's a little more closely related to the Shirley Jackson book, I guess. Like, I mean, but it's almost a similar premise to House on Haunted Hill or whatever. Because it's about this psychiatrist who puts this group of, in the beginning he says they're professionals, but none of them seem professional at anything. Like, I don't understand why they're his research team, other than the fact that he brings them in there because they have some sort of like way to link to the house, or kind of an element towards the supernatural. But this is another one that's like, the two females, Judy Davis plays Eleanor, and that's the character that's mentally ill, or has some sort of issue, mental deficiencies,
hysterical as
yeah, again, that's another one. But she's like totally hysterical through the whole movie. She's just like freaking out and talking to herself, and she goes completely mad by the end of it. Like the house kind of gets to her, But this is another one where, this had some moments that were, I guess, especially for the time period, probably would have played out as really creepy. In terms of today's desensitized crowd, it doesn't get much of a rise out of you, but it certainly uses sound.
That's why I wanted you to watch this
really heavily. That's all the scares are in this, other than doors kind of opening and closing, and maybe once or twice actually slamming. It's all these footsteps and these voices, and some of the auditory stuff does get a little creepy, certainly there are reactions, and you can kind of, you can certainly see some of that influence on those like super tight close-ups of like with wide angle lenses of like terrified women, and faces, which, certainly, Raimi does it all the time. Like,
this is what I mean.
Uses such an extreme.
When I watched this for the first time,
by these movies.
Yeah, when I watched it for the first time, I was like, "Oh my god!" Evil Dead ripped off all of their, in the cabin scares of like zooming in on the cabin coming alive. I never knew it, and truly, like he did a great job. Yeah.
And and flash zooms and stuff like that in this. So the way it's shot, and it does get creepy, and it certainly is a super slow build. It like really builds up to the crescendo at the end. But this is that in this one, the house is haunted. Like, this house is alive. At least that's the idea. And everybody by the end of it has some really kind of traumatizing experience with the house or the people around it. So, it's certainly great for what it is. You couldn't get it away with pushing something this slow out the gate right now. Like your modern horror audience wouldn't buy that pacing right now.
What about A24? Could they?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe they could.
There'd have to be some twist on it though. With A24. But
Them or Blumhouse.
I was going to ask though. So who here has seen this one?
Yeah, seen it.
Okay,
Not me.
The irony of me seeing this movie and movies like that where they rely so much on the music is that I would watch these with the sound down and just listening to music, because the black and white movies. This is black and white, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many black and white movies were great just to have in the background. So if I was like drawing or doing whatever,
right,
I had to go back and actually experience these films as they were intended, which I think is what you're talking about. Is the sound is so integral to the experience.
Yeah,
and that's why I wanted to watch him to watch this one.
Shadow too, because the shadow is so heavy in it. It does have a building mood to it, but it's a real slow moving film, it takes a long time to get going. And there's a few really extended dialogue scenes that are really
all exposition.
But you can see why it's such an influential film, and you could certainly see why audiences at the time would be scared by it. And it certainly does have a strong visual and auditory element to it that makes it kind of significant.
Yeah. And, and again, I was trying to choose films for this episode that would be just really iconic for what we were trying to do, which is the ghost story.
Right.
And so I feel again, this one, even more so than maybe the House on Haunted Hill, is this for me is the quintessential haunted house film. Because like you said, Nick, it is all about the house. It's not about the characters, although they have a tie to it, but it really is the main character in it is the house. And what's fascinating about this era too, so this was 60s, and then you didn't really get a lot of other ghost stories or anything like that until the early 70s. Like, I mean, I couldn't find any. I'm sure I would love if people are watching, if they want to send us their comments and let me know if I'm wrong. But it wasn't until the Legend of Hell House, which was in 1973, which is again like a sort of remake of the House on Haunted Hill. And then Burnt Offerings in 1976, which I'm a big fan of, that I almost covered for this episode because
it is a good one.
My choice was I had to get something in like the 70s era because that for me is like my favorite decade of American cinema. And Dirk, you have something to add to that?
Well, yeah. So in 1979, there was a movie called Dominique that came out. Have you seen Dominique?
No, I didn't even have that on my list.
Okay, so it's great. The trailer is pretty awesome. You can find it online really easily, and it's great because it just keeps saying like Dominique is dead, like over and over, and you're like, we get it. Like I don't see, like it shows her grave, and it's like Dominique is dead. It shows her hanging. You're like, yeah, all right, I get it. And then the end of the trailer, it's like, or is she? And you're like, you just told me 19 times she's dead. Like I guess we have to watch the movie now. But yeah, Dominique from 1979. Sometimes it's credited as 80, but 79 is when it came out.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of amazing stuff, and I'm going to cut to some of the ones that I was like, in my research was looking at. You know, so there's Burnt Offerings that came out. There was also Amityville Horror was 79 as well. Death Ship in 1980. The Fog in 1980. And then the one I'm going to review, The Changeling, was in 1980. And then there was the...
Was that 1980? I thought that was 70.
I swear I thought it was like, it seems like a mid-70s movie. And then The Entity in 82 and Poltergeist in 82. So there was like this insane run of awesome like supernatural movies that happened between like mid-70s and early 80s is... I think almost like the golden age of
it's definitely
of supernatural films.
They're
my favorite
before
ones.
Ghosts, it was before Ghosts. There was a whole big glut of possession movies and demonic movies like The Omen and Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I honestly we contemplated whether we should include those, and I was like, it's overstuffing. It's a different genre.
They're not ghosts. It's a whole different. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah, exactly. But which I would love to do. The devil. It's the devil, exactly. And demons, which is possession and demons is a whole other subgenre. But yeah, so that's an incredible run though. So I don't know if anybody here has seen Death Ship from 1980.
Yes.
It is awesome. I just watched it for the first time a couple of months ago. It's like these people on a cruise ship that sinks end up like on a lifeboat, and they come across this abandoned ghost ship that is full of like Nazi ghosts. It is so fucking trippy and awesome.
The poster's amazing.
Yeah.
The front of the ship with like a skull.
Yeah, I've seen the poster. I remember the video cover.
Yeah, I mean it's so worth
watching.
watching.
Know if I've seen it.
And and The Fog, we're not going to talk about because we've already talked about it twice on this podcast. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Amityville Horror, I grew up in Long Island. That was like a staple to watch when we were kids. And that, again, is like, one of those, like, of the whole haunted house genre. That is kind of the 70s, the one people think about. That's why I wanted to review The Changeling. Because The Changeling, I'm going to play the trailer for it right now, then we'll jump into it.
Within this old house live two residents. One of them is John Russell, composer, professor. The other has been dead for over 70 years.
Did you die in this house? How did you die?
Whatever it is trying desperately to communicate.
Changeling, an experience beyond total fear.
Yeah, so The Changeling, I'll just give a quick, you can't really tell from that trailer what
Poor
the plot
George
is.
C. Scott.
Well, so after the death of his wife and daughter in a car crash, a music professor staying in an old mansion is dragged into a decades-old mystery by an inexplicable presence in the mansion's attic. So he ends up renting this haunted house to just work out of because he's this like famous composer, and he's like mourning the death of his wife and daughter, which happens in the first scene of the movie that is totally fucking awful to watch. Like they're like cars stuck on the side of the road and they're pushing it through snow, and it's a hilarious scene because the families, they're like, okay, we got one scene with the family, we got to show they're happy, so they're stuck in snow with a broken down car and everybody's laughing. I was like, I just know myself. If I was in a car that was stuck down, I'd be fucking cursing and kicking shit. But anyway, and then his a traffic accident happens when he's at this weird phone booth in the middle of nowhere talking, and he has to witness it. It's just really harrowing. Like it grounds you really quickly. Like, okay, this is a fucked up movie. And then the scares and the time it takes in the mansion to build the suspense, and it's all like it's mostly during the day. It's really well done, and like similar to what you were saying, Nick, about the haunting, like it takes its time. And the thing I love about this movie, I just revisited for like the third time last night, is that it's actually such a good drama. Like, the drama is what it propels the story, and the creepy moments and the little scary moments. It definitely doesn't hold up from like a scares angle.
Well,
anymore.
I remember when I was young watching this, and this movie scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, well, it definitely scared me when I was young.
The scares in it are really, really effective. Like,
well,
you
they're
watch
earned.
as an adult, you've seen so much that you're desensitized to it, but
this is the first movie with a bouncing ball of child ball down the stairs, and like many of the things they do.
When I was a kid, that terrified me. I thought that was the most horrifying thing ever.
And now they've been done to death, but this was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
The wheelchair.
Yeah, and then the actual story of like who the ghost is, the mystery he has to solve, is so compelling, and still is. Like watching it last night, I was like, damn, it's just such a good drama. And you also have George C. Scott, who talk about. It's funny because this is what they used to do back in the day. They'd get like an iconic actor who's in his 70s, and then he's like married to a woman in her 20s or 30s. Yeah. They're like, what the hell? Like they would never cast that like that anymore, probably for the right reasons. But it is wonderful watching somebody like at the top of his game. Like George C. Scott owns every scene he's in. Even there's this one scene where there's a senator who's kind of like one of the, like, I'd say villains, but not really in the film, and he sends his like tough bodyguard after George C. Scott, and the exchange of the two of them in this room is like worth the whole movie, because you just see how like George C. Scott almost says nothing, but he's like just his presence on acting against this guy is just so well done. You're like, this is the benefits of casting George C. Scott, not like a young up and comer for the role. But yeah, so this one definitely is like, I'd say has all the what are now tropes of ghost stories, of like a little kid who's creepy and scary and a ghost communicating through banging on the walls, and like you literally can go through the checklist of a ghost movie in this movie, but it still works and it still feels like fresh in its own way. So I'd say definitely check this one out. What about the rest of the group here? Have you seen this?
I just watched it for the first time. I did like a spin of like everything we're talking about
nice.
tonight.
Wow.
So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I thought it was pretty creepy, like for not having like seen it before. Like it definitely creeped me out. And I mean, it was weird watching it because like I'm a big fan of like American Horror Story, and like so many of just like classic like segments that you see in horror movies like literally came from this film, like like the ball, like talking about rolling the ball, and like, oh my god, the wheelchair at the top of the stairs. I was like, if I watched this when I was like 8 or 9, I would never go upstairs by myself.
And
again.
the kid ghost drowning underwater, and the little locket thing. Oh, there's so many.
Old when I saw this.
Yeah, good. Younger the better.
Yeah.
And from a sounds perspective, like I would love, Tom, if you haven't watched this one, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because they do a lot with sound.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Cool. So that was what we were just talking about, the 80s. I'm going to go back to mention that the before we move on to the next ones, I might play the 1-minute trailer for Poltergeist, because that came out in 82, and it's insane to watch movies like we just watched the trailer.
Are we not talking about that one tonight?
We will. I don't know if we want to get too deep into it, but we need to talk about just the production of it, because it is something so freaking unique when you look at how, because it's Spielberg production value teamed up with Tobe Hooper. So like you look at Burn Offerings, you look at The Fog that came out in '82, you look at or '80 and The Entity, which was '82. Like those movies look great. They're they're cinematic, but you take the Spielberg production value and you put it in Tobe Hooper as a director, and this one is, I mean, ultimate kinder trauma was this movie, I think, for many of us. So I'm going to play the trailer for it just so you can remember some of these moments. If I loaded it up properly, hold on. Oh, maybe I didn't load it up. Shit. Sorry, guys. Well, just imagine it. I mean, I can actually get it loaded up while we chat about the next ones. But it's just the production value is so much better than any of the other ones that are happening from a sound and picture and everything perspective.
Since you're talking about 1982.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, please go ahead, Dirk. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to say, in 1982, a movie came out called The House Where Evil Dwells, and it's often described as a supernatural sex movie. So if we're talking about something as highbrow as Poltergeist, I just wanted to throw that out there too. The same year.
I've never heard of that one.
That sounds like it's right up my alley.
It's pretty awesome.
Do you guys remember The Entity though? Like I remember being terrified, like disgusted with that movie. It's like a rape. It's a ghost rape movie.
Over and over.
Oh yeah, it's hard to watch. I don't know if
The house is in Culver City.
For real, The Entity house?
Yeah, it was right. It was literally a block away from my apartment. The house that it actually took place in, which is very unassuming.
The house on Haunted Hill is in Los Feliz.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Really?
Oh.
Wait, which one? The
It's on Franklin. I forget the cross.
Hollywood Boulevard. The one
it's got
up
a crazy,
Hollywood?
like, sort of diamond-shaped window in the front.
I know he's got some
my
cool
boathouse
houses.
is a Frank Lloyd Wright. The
boathouse is it really?
I thought you said my boathouse. I was like, wow, okay.
I'm so bougie.
Well, okay, Bridget.
30, flirty, and thriving. Or whatever the hell it is.
Exactly. We do have a question. I
Sure.
in the chat. It's a little off topic, but it says some people consider Terminator 1 to be a horror film. I don't think so. Do you guys have an opinion on that?
I have lots of opinions. It is a
It's
slasher
horror
film. He wrote it based on he was so inspired by
100%.
Halloween that he
That's
wrote.
why it's the best one, and that's why all the ones afterwards kind of don't work. Even though the second one's awesome, but they just don't work. And I heard, but the next Terminator film, the word is that it's going back to its horror roots.
Good, because we talked about that. You should go back and watch our Terminator podcast and the time travel series, because we talk about why.
Yeah, we do.
All this discussion we have, which is why the first one's the best and why you should watch it. Okay, so then we're going to jump through time now.
Thanks for the question, though.
Yes, that's a great question.
Yes.
And it's definitely worth going back and rewatching our Terminator 1, and you'll get the answer.
Yeah, because we get into that a lot.
Yeah, deeply. So the 90s came up after the 80s. There was some in the 80s, although there was more, as we discussed.
The 90s came after the 80s?
Yes, but think about this. There's slasher. In the 80s, there was like slasher films, and the 80s was an explosion of horror. And I think ghost stories kind of got like pushed to the side for a while. And that's why the 90s, they came like roaring back. So hold on, let me pull up the 90s shot. And you're probably going to like forget some of these. Like Flatliners is really like a supernatural ghost movie. I mean, they're crossing over to the other side, but they're also bringing ghosts back with them. And I like Flatliners a lot. That movie scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Yeah,
And,
I guess it kind of is a ghost.
It is, yeah. And then there was, Stir of Echoes.
Paul Verhoeven, right?
I don't know.
No, Joel Schumacher.
Oh, Schumacher.
Right. Okay.
God rest his soul.
Yeah.
But then also The Frighteners was in that era. Sixth Sense, remember Sixth Sense was, the big breakout for Shyamalan.
Was that 98?
Yes, that was like 98. And I
98 was like the best year of modern cinema ever.
And Stir of Echoes, I almost reviewed for this show as well, because that's such a little like forgotten about gem with
that's a good one.
Yeah,
Kevin
I
Bacon.
really like
Bacon.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those that I don't think gets enough respect for being a good ghost story.
They had a very effective trailer for that, which used the Rolling Stones "Paint It Black" song.
Oh yeah,
and,
I remember that.
That was a really well done creepy kid movie, and they had the whole like fingernails getting pulled off thing in it. That was like creepy as hell.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to revisit it. And then the Haunting well, what's happened too though in 90s is the Haunting remake and the House on Haunted Hill remake came out the same year in '99.
Yeah, so I ended up watching both House on Haunted Hill movies, and the funny thing is that like, so it came out 40 years after the first one, and a lot's changed since then, obviously, but it seems like they basically said let's remake this because it's in the public domain too, so it was super cheap to get the rights and all that stuff. And they updated it for basically the Lollapalooza generation. So it's the visuals are vastly updated, but they kind of make it look like a wannabe Tool / 9 Inch Nails music video in a lot of parts. And,
do you want me to play the trailer?
Yeah. If you have it queued up, go.
I do. I can cue it up in a second. It turns out I didn't load this one in either. I got rushed towards the end, guys, because the audio was all not working again. Okay, House on Haunted Hill. Where's the? All right, that's it. Hold on. Okay.
This is the one with Chris Kattan, right? He's
yes.
Like bad guy,
yes.
Guy.
Okay, hold on. So
he plays the same. Yeah. Well, I'll get into it.
All right.
This Halloween, 6 strangers have been invited to a party. If they can stay up till dawn, they'll win $1 million each. The only catch is that they'll have to live through the night.
Let the games begin.
So there's your taste of the '90s glory.
Yeah, I remember that I watched this movie. I also remember not liking this movie, but I don't remember a thing about it other than Chris Kattan was in it.
Here's the thing. I mean, it's the same. It's the same movie as the '59 version. Plus, they added some ghost stuff. They changed the location of it to this like evil old psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane, where some stereotypical like mad doctor was like cutting people up for no reason, and then everybody dies, and like
that's what a good mad doctor does.
Yeah, and so the place is haunted with all the souls of these tortured people. Right. But the rest of the basic plot is the same, and Chris Kattan plays the owner of the place, who was this. There's basically all the same characters are in this movie, but then they add the extra like actual haunting stuff, and there's a couple of really like gothic set pieces that do some like creepy stuff, but otherwise it's basically the same. So there's not really a whole lot of meat there, and they try and cover it up with like style and some actually really nice like set work too. Like the set design in it is pretty cool. It looks good. And
I remember there being some like,
but wasn't this also
cool visuals in it? But
there's some neat gore in it. Greg Nicotero did some of the makeup effects, and there's some neat like.
Doesn't someone's face invert underwater or something? That's what I remember.
Well, sort of. It's like they have a couple of different like jump scare monster face things that like they do like the back and forth thing a whole lot.
The Jacob's Ladder thing.
Jacob's Ladder, and but then there is one that has like it's like a big mouth with no eyes or anything, but then. The one that really freaked me out though was like the Oh, the eccentric millionaire guy is a
Jeffrey Rush.
and
He's so great and everything.
He's doing an homage to Vincent Price, which is one
Good for
thing.
you.
But he has like a video guy that's supposed to be helping him because he's doing pranks and stuff. And at one point, he turns the video guy around, and he doesn't have a face, but it's because it was chewed out or something. And that was the most shocking part of it for as far as like effects and gore and stuff goes, I think.
Well, so compared to the original, so you watched both of them, like,
yeah.
You know, how do you feel about them for both now after watching both of them?
The first one, I don't know, it's a little thin. I mean, it's only 75 minutes long. It doesn't age well, you know. It ages like milk. But the second one, I give them an A for effort because they did make it look cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they did actually like add to the story. There's an actual ghost thing going on when there really isn't in the first one. And the CGI at the end doesn't really hold up too well. It's kind of blah.
That's what I remember most about that movie, is being like really disappointed in the little CGI they did. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other imagery they had was decent, you know, and I didn't find it particularly scary. I seem to remember finding it more scary when I was younger, but and basically they just sort of revamped it for like the kids love the Marilyn Manson and the Nine Inch Nails and stuff now, so they tooled it for that, and I'm sure it did pretty well. I didn't look up the box office, but
I think it did, because I mean, if you like, then we can actually now go into what happened afterwards, which is, you know, the late 90s, mid to late 90s was the resurgence of ghost movies, and then like 2000 it just took off. Like right after that was 13 Ghosts, and then overseas you had these amazing influences overseas, where there was like The Devil's Backbone, 2001, The Ring.
That was incredible.
The Ring actually was made in 96 or something over in Japan, but then The Ring came out in the US in 2002. The Eye, which is a Korean movie that is a great ghost story, came out at that, you know, in 2002 as well. The Orphanage was 2008. Paranormal Activity came out in 2008. So like there was this really run of great like ghost movies that all came out in like the early to mid 90s. And we're going to talk about, actually Bridget's going to talk about the one that she chose, which was The Others, that came out in 2002. Which I was super psyched when she said this is the one she wanted to talk about. Do you want me to play do you want me to play the trailer and then dive into it?
Oh yeah, and definitely. Real quick before we get into that, I did this week watch the remake of The Haunting.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Don't bother. I remember liking that one though. Like, it's not a great film, and the CGI I remember being awful, but like I do remember.
Well, I just like watched it because it's Liam Neeson, Owen Wilson,
it's a great
Catherine
cast.
Zeta-Jones. So I saw this cast and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And then I'm sitting here and it was like so much, like it was good, but it was too borderline like scary to a comedy. Like it just was like very much a gray area. So I mean, one time watch.
The CG is bad.
Yeah, both those films. I remember both those remakes coming out the same year. Yeah, they came out the same year, and it made me hate CGI
not
for
Scorpion
years.
King bad, I hope.
Not quite that bad. That's like nightmarish bad.
All right, so we're gonna watch the trailer for The Others, which was 2002.
Sometimes the world of the dead gets mixed up with the world of the living. How do you do, children? I'm your new nanny.
Are you going to leave us too?
Why should I leave you?
The others said they wouldn't, but they did, and then it happened. Why have you opened the curtains? It was Victor.
You told your brother that there was someone else in the room.
There was.
That'll do, Anne.
I've seen them too.
What do you want?
They're everywhere. They say this house is theirs.
Where is my daughter?
Are you mad?
Dude, I get chills on that scene every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, the others. So this is probably, it's one of my favorite movies. I first saw it probably about like 5 or 6 years ago now, and it was a film I accidentally stumbled upon. I was watching something else on like HBO on television, and this was just like on right afterwards, and I was getting up to go do something, and then like the movie started, and like right from the get-go I just like was completely just drawn to the movie. I was like just had to sit and watch the whole thing. And so others, let me give you a quick synopsis. So
Sure.
it's Nicole Kidman, who is the star of this whole thing. She is absolutely phenomenal. So it opens up, and she's in this big house out in what's supposed to be the countryside, they say Jersey. And it's like away from her husband's off to war. And she has these 2 children, so you don't know she has the 2 children right away. So the movie opens up, and these 3 individuals approach the house looking for work. They say they've come for an ad to work in the house. So she's giving them like a tour of this big house that she's in. And every time she enters a room, she unlocks and locks the door right behind them in every room. It's every single door. She opens the door, locks it, closes it, moves out to the next room. It's this giant ring of keys. And so the first just 5-10 minutes of the film is building up. Like, it's pretty suspenseful because she's waiting to introduce you to the children. And so you think like they're going to be these like horrific monsters almost, because it keeps building and building and building. And what it turns out to be is her children are photosensitive. I actually have it here. It's called xeroderma pigmentosum, meaning that they can't be exposed to sunlight, or they get bumps all over their skin.
They're
And
goth.
yeah, yep. And so you're waiting until like they meet the kids, and she opens the last door, and it's a pitch black room, only by candlelight. You hear her wake up the children. You just hear quiet whispers, and then it's like, boom, they've killed it. Okay, the children, but they're like normal. You're like, oh, okay, like they're not crazy. But the film is probably one of the most suspenseful films I've seen ever. Like, it keeps you on edge the entire time. Every couple of minutes, there's like another hint, another clue that it's building up to something bigger. And so what happens is one of the children is making contact with a ghost named Vincent, another child, and Nicole Kidman does not believe her daughter is speaking to this ghost. And so it becomes this whole rigmarole. The daughter gets punished because Nicole Kidman doesn't believe her, and all this stuff keeps happening. And they think that there's visitors or people in the house with them. And so Nicole Kidman is like, it shows her like going mad, trying to figure out who's invading her home, what's going on. And it seems like everyone's in on the plot but her. And it's just so intense. I don't want to spoil it because it's
definitely don't spoil it,
to watch through.
Because when you
it's
learn
so
it,
amazing.
and this was coming off of like Sixth Sense, where you felt like everything had to be a twist. But it work. Not only does it work,
this is a good one though.
Yeah. This is not only where the twist works, but it makes then repeated viewing so much more fun. Like, I remember the first time I finished it, it kind of messed my mind up a little bit, and I think I quickly went back and rewatched it, not so long afterwards, just to like approach it with the knowledge of knowing what happens in the story. And it definitely takes all the tropes and just twists it on its head with how they mess with the story. So this is one. And Nicole Kidman, I mean, just come on, she's always like solid, and it's great to see her get a really good, juicy lead role.
She's amazing. I mean, at the end of the movie, you kind of just do one of those like back against the wall. And you're like, did that just happen? Like, did I just watch that?
But yeah, I have to cut our trailers down to 1 minute just to speed the episode along, and literally cutting this trailer gave me the creeps because I was like remembering some of those scenes. They're just really well done, and it's not like it's the essence of why I love a good ghost story or a ghost movie. You get that little like tingling on your spine, right? So it's not like you're grossed out or freaked out or anything. You're just like a little bit off. And this movie, I think, is one of the ones I will always revisit for that. It's like everything I wish all those earlier ones we were talking about would do, like The Haunting, the original Haunting. Like, that's how I want to feel with those movies, is the kind of feeling I get when I watch the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 specific scenes in this film that like just still give me goosebumps to this day. Is the one where she goes into Nicole Kidman walks into one of the rooms of the house, and everything is covered in the white drapes, and she's like hears she hears the door opens and she doesn't see someone, but someone goes into this room that she can't see. And so it's like, who's in the room with her? Who's in it? And it's like, you're just sitting there waiting for something to pop out at you. And oh my God, that's just crazy. And then the other one where she puts her daughter in her first communion dress and she goes off and does something and then comes back. And the kid has the back to the camera and is playing with like a little puppet on the floor. She's like singing and it's just so creepy, so beyond creepy. And then
that's the one in the trailer, right?
Yeah, that's the clip at the end of the trailer that we showed. I honestly was going to shorten the trailer. It's a little over 1 minute, but I had to keep that last shot in because it just freaks me out so much.
It's freaky.
Yeah, so then after that one, truly I was mentioning the ones that came after that, which were like the Eye, the Orphanage. If you haven't seen those, like The Devil's Backbone, there's so many. It was like
Devil's Backbone is incredible.
So many good foreign films started influencing American cinema at that point. We were just pulling all these great directors over to the United States. Then what ended up happening was 2007 was Paranormal Activity came out, and that made so much money and it cost so little to make that then it launched that whole Conjuring universe. So that's kind of like where we ended up. But what I found Dirk, so I told Dirk like he needed to get something that was like close to modern, like in more contemporary times. So then I gave it up to Dirk because he has such a eclectic taste in movies. I said, the ball's in your court. So tell us, Dirk, what did you choose?
Okay, so I'm super excited, and I apologize for being so excited. But to get to my movie, we have to go back to 1998. So in 1998, what we're having happen is we're getting John Carpenter's Vampires, we're getting Halloween H2O, we're getting the teen horror cycle, Urban Legends, and The Faculty, and Matthew Broderick and Godzilla. But in 98, Hideo Nakata directs the Ringu film in Japan, and that starts something intense. And one of the films I'm going to talk about does the same thing. And it's not that it's the first Japanese ghost movie by any means whatsoever, but it somehow has all the right pieces at the right time to gel and create what people then start to call J-horror. Now, Ringu is based off a 1991 novel by Koji Suzuki, and I just rewatched the film, and the film starts with two girls watching baseball. And now, Sadako, the ghost girl in Ringu, became so famous in Japan that you can see footage of her throwing out the baseball at baseball games with her hair over her face, the white dress with zero movement. It's really incredible. So I don't think we realize in the States how prolific and huge these films were. And we can't really talk about Ringu if we don't mention Ju-on. So Ju-on, obviously, by writer and director Takahashi Shimizu, please? Yes. What most people don't know about Ju-on is that's the third film. There's two that came before it, Katasumi and 410s, which were short films that he shot while in film school. So his first feature is actually the third in a series, and we in the States just had no idea because how would we see those movies? Takahashi Shimizu, unlike Nakata, would continue to direct his own story when it went to our side of whatever. So he does The Grudge in 2004, The Grudge 2 in 2006. He opts out of The Grudge 3 for some reason. And then we get Grudge 2020, directed by Nicholas Pess, who we know did Eyes of My Mother in 2016 and Piercing in 2018. Both very interesting movies, but sadly not ghost stories. These two juggernaut franchises were so huge that we ultimately get a Sadako versus Kayako film in 2016, which is here, the Freddy versus Jason, only better, I think. You can send all hate mail to you guys, please.
And we love hate mail. Gladly accepted.
And then Hideo Nakata returns in 2002 to direct another short story by Koji Shimizu. And this then is remade, Dark Waters, remade in 2005 by Walter Saller, because if you're making a ghost story, you need John C. Reilly in it. I don't know the thinking there, but
yeah, you
that's
do.
what happened. Yeah. And then, Lucas, you were right. There was a slew of these back and forths. So I wrote down Cairo in 2001 became Pulse in 2006. The Eye became The Eye in 2008. Into the Mirror became Mirrors in 2008. A Tale of Two Sisters, which is awesome. 2003 became the
really good.
Yeah, in 2000. No one's seen that movie, but A Tale of Two Sisters is amazing.
It's creepy.
Yes,
it's super creepy.
Super creepy.
I mean, it's Korean. It's Korean.
Yeah,
all Korean horror is the creepiest, most
I agree.
unsettling
They
shit.
just they
the
they
best.
got their finger on it.
They
man.
nail the genre in a way that no other country does. For, you
Yes.
know.
Completely. And so anyway, my point is that every once in a while a film comes along and it just has all the right parts. And yes, you have to have Onibaba and you have to have Kwaidan, but eventually a movie has all the ingredients and it hits in such a way. And that's what happened with Mr. Vampire. Now you might be thinking that's not the movie I'm talking about, which is true, but I will talk about it a little bit after I get to my film, which is 2013's Rigor Mortis.
All right, I'm going to play the trailer right now. I mean, you had me at Kung Fu Ghost Story. I mean, that's all you had to say.
Right. So IMDb says this is a public housing tenement plunged into a dark storm of supernatural chaos, which I think is a little bit of an oversimplification. You can also find it described as a suicidal actor tries to kill himself in an apartment building. Unbeknownst to him, the apartment block is inhabited by a vampire hunter, ghosts, and other supernatural beings. That's a little more accurate. The film's directed by Juno Mack, who's a producer as well as an actor. You can see him in Dream Home and Revenge, a Love Story in 2010. That's how you'll find Juno Mack. But this is his first directorial debut. So I'm amazed, first of all. So here's where time gets a little slippery as we carve into this, because we get to talk a little bit about something special for a ghost episode, which is the Shaw Brothers. Now, I'm guessing you all know the Shaw Brothers. But for anyone listening anyone listening that doesn't know them, if you've seen Kill Bill 1, you've seen some Shaw Brothers work, because the plucking of the eye Uma does in the big battle at the end is directly lifted from King Boxer, aka Five Fingers of Death. He also throws up the Shaw Brothers logo at the beginning of the film just to show he's not hiding any of these awesome moves that he's doing. The Shaw Brothers was the largest film production company in Hong Kong from 1925 to 2011. Some of the films are 36 Chambers of Shaolin, hello Wu-Tang Clan. We get The Kid with the Golden Arm, Boxer's Omen, which is awesome. If people haven't seen that, check that out. One-Armed Swordsman, Flying Guillotine, just to name a few.
Flying Guillotine is an incredible film if you guys haven't seen it. It has like so many Street Fighter characters came from that. They've ripped off and used in Street Fighter, some of the characters. Anyway.
Yeah. So the reason I mentioned
Hadouken!
Yes. The reason I mentioned the Shaw Brothers is because they made a film called Mr. Vampire in 1985. What is commonly referred to as a hopping vampire movie. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Chinese hopping vampire films, but this is the film that did what Ringu did for J-horror. So they introduced the idea of the Zhanshu, the pale, often arms outstretched in robes, and they hop. And the reason they hopped is because they had rigor mortis in their body. So they weren't the most agile creatures. But unlike vampires, they don't spread by biting. If they attack you, you start to become a monster in a way. They're also magically resurrected and reanimated with negative energy. So it's very interesting. And while Mr. Vampire isn't the first film on the subject, it is the first film that had all the right pieces that gelled and created something that did 4 sequels, 2 spin-offs, and 24 copycat films. So we're talking about something that from 1985 that most of us didn't know existed, that created like its own solidified genre of this version of something, which is incredible, right?
Yeah.
And it would be incredible if this movie was just lifting that style. but it's not. A huge chunk of the cast comes directly from Mr. Vampire 1985.
Nice.
Now, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, we're cut from separate cloths because I cried at the end of Phantasm 5.
You mean Ravager?
So, Fat
Yeah.
Chung, Anthony Chan, Richard Ang, Billy Lau, Chin Soo-ho, all in this movie. Not to mention, Chin Soo-ho is playing an old out-of-work horror actor named Chin Soo-ho.
All right, so Dirk, what I'm gathering is if you want to do this movie proper, you must watch the first one in '85 that started it all. No? Why not?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, and here's why. Because I think there's two ways to watch this movie.
Sure.
One, you go in not knowing anything. I did it that way, and I had this weird kung fu Lynchian bizarre world that I was in, and I didn't understand why I was there, what was happening. I loved every second of it. Then I learned the history of the hopping vampire because I'm like, why are they hopping? And then now I love this movie in an entirely different way. But I'm not done. Fat Chung is excellent as the person in the movie who may be up to something very shady. But it's Anthony Chan, who's so fucking cool as the cook. Although his character's not called Cook, he's the guy that cooks the fried rice that everyone loves in this building. Now, what is cool about Anthony Chan is that he was out of work for 20 years, right? So Mac
Probably making fried rice in buildings for 25
Mac
years.
finds him and says, hey, reprise this role essentially in these movies that he hadn't done in over 20 years, and he gets nominated for the Best Acting Award in the Hong Kong films.
Nice.
Like, what is happening with this hopping vampire movie that people haven't heard about?
But that's such a Tarantino thing to do, is take a obscure actor who was huge once, who is not big anymore, cast them in your movie, pay them very little, and then it launches their career again. I mean, it's clever. That's clever.
It's true. And cast and crew aside, there's other things to mention about this film, but I have to mention the cinematographer's Man Ching, who shoots this thing, I think, gorgeously for what it is. And there's all kinds of special effects and slow motions and bizarre things where concrete becomes wet concrete and they're flapping around in it. It's awesome. If you'd like to see more of his work, I recommend Iron Mask with Jackie Chan and Arnold Schwarzenegger in powder wigs.
I don't believe that's a real thing.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing, but don't watch it. Really.
I'll just say, from watching the trailer, and that's all I've seen of this movie so far, I was like, I don't think you could put this movie in, like, you can put it in the supernatural category for sure, but it feels like it exists in like multiple universes and categories at once. So I'm very excited to watch this one for sure.
Well, here's the problem, though. So to finish my thought on the film, I kind of have to tell you something that maybe you don't want to know about it.
Sure.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Disclaimer.
But I don't think, I mean, okay, if someone's listening, I apologize to you all because I have to do it for this episode, but it doesn't really impair your viewing of the film, but it does inspire it, I think, in a way. And the reason is, and also I am from here, so I'm going to mispronounce some of these words. Each ghost in the film, yes, ghosts, are based on mythological Chinese ghosts from historical reference. The actor is a Dai Si Gu, a lost soul who wanders aimlessly after suicide or hanging. The old man is a Zhang Shu, the ghost vampire that I mentioned earlier. The old woman is a Gui Po, a ghost who means well, but maybe goes too far with her methods. The twins are vengeful spirits suffering from sexual assault and suicide. And the mother's a Di Fu Ling, a ghost eternally bound to the location that drove her to suicide. Now, they also give you the tall ghost that crossed through a hallway. This happens in the film, and when it happened, I was like, I don't know what's happening, but this is incredible. These are references of reapers, of which there's 3 kinds in Chinese lore. The first one returns the soul home 7 days after they've died to finish their business before they're taken to hell. The second one collects lost souls after they've wandered for 7 days. And the third one hunts wandering souls down and catches them in their parasol, which is where the expression comes from, to not open a parasol indoors, for it may contain a ghost. There's so much ghost in this movie.
Okay, wait. Do we need this cheat sheet when we watch it, though? Do we have to have the Wikipedia page open while we watch it? No. You're just like, just soak it up. Soak it all
my
in.
4th viewing, all of that, which it's just another layer of detail that you're like watching this Kung Fu Ghost thing that you can watch and have a great time with. But if you know all this stuff, you realize what Juno Mak put into this movie that he didn't have to. It could have been a reboot or whatever. And instead, he revitalizes it with fresh blood, but with the old blood still in it. And they're all fantastic. So that's all I have to say about Rigor Mortis. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that one for sure.
God, now I'm like,
Nice.
I need to do a
the
deep dive.
nice thing about watching foreign horror movies is they have so much different culture and different like history and things that I mean, frankly, I have no idea about. So watching those things, it gives it such an extra added sense of like confusion and that makes the horror just so much different. But then the way you explain that I mean, that's like so rich. I mean, that's like a whole bunch of onion layers there to that story.
It's pretty cool. And like you say, I totally agree with like foreign horror, and that's why I love it so much, because it's like in ghost stories that from the Western standpoint, you have to be like, well, but why is that happening, or where is that coming from? But if it's from another culture, you're just like, well, I guess that fits. Like, I don't understand the logic of any of this, and I certainly am not going to be like, no. So then you're just like, whoa, that's really incredible that there's all these things out there.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts of Midsummer.
Oh yeah, everything just felt like you had to just take it as it comes.
It was just super foreign.
Yeah. There's a couple of really great Indian horror films that I watched last year that I'll have to. I think in the future we're gonna have to do an episode that is just dedicated to foreign, and maybe we'll even just do different regions. Because that would be really fun to do. But anyway,
I mean,
I have a
Tigers
question.
are Not Afraid just came out not
oh,
that
it's
long
an
ago.
amazing
That was
film.
Incredible.
That was my favorite
story.
film of like 2 years ago, whatever.
It's one of the best movies made in the last decade, for sure. It's brilliant.
Well, I did want to end on talking about also His House, which was, I was just going to mention that if anybody's like really wants to watch a great ghost story after listening to this podcast and they want to watch something contemporary and not go back in time like we just did, His House is the one I would recommend off the bat. It's on Netflix. Almost everybody has a Netflix account, and that's just did all the things that a ghost story does
really
well,
creepy.
and did it from a new, fresh perspective and angle. So,
well, we talked about go ahead,
go Derek.
I think in your last episode, didn't you end with everyone had to come back with their favorite
horror
soundtrack?
Yeah, those horror soundtracks. Shit, I forgot about that. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna say The Fog because it's like I have that on my Spotify playlist and I listen to it all the time. So I say The Fog.
Oh man,
you don't have to do it now.
Fail for this course.
No, I said The Fog. So.
I'll throw mine out there as Phantasm.
Phantasm is great.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I love it.
Did you? Did you see the final one in the theater? The Final Phantasm.
No. I cried at home. Yeah.
Oh, so I saw it in the theater. And I got to tell you,
did you really? You saw Ravager in the theater?
It was only out for like 1 week, and but everybody in the theater was like super fans, and it was it was emotional, man. It was like, and because it's such an intimate film. I mean, it's like the same people for decades making the same movie. Cool. All right,
director.
we got to wrap it up here. We're definitely over an hour, but But Dirk, thank you so much for joining us. How do we find? So how do people find your podcast, Mr. Marshall?
Oh yeah, so VHS is the podcast, and you can find us pretty much anywhere. I think that there's podcasts. You can also our Instagram and Twitter is VHS_podcast, and you'll find like I have the first female hentai artist in New Mexico does new art for us every week for each episode.
Cool.
So that's where you could go find her stuff. She's really awesome. And we have a website, vh-us.com, and you'll find like additional content on there as well.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So
we'll check it out.
Well, going off of that, make sure to. So this was live tonight, but if you tuned in late or you want to catch the whole podcast tonight, make sure to stream Film Dorks on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all of the above, and give us a follow at Screen Radar on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are also on Letterboxd, so there's definitely a few horror lists up there, some of our favorite horror films, and definitely go check that out. There's a ton of great content on there, all films, all movies, really great.
I'll also post on Letterboxd after this episode wraps. I'll post all the films we mentioned, every single one of the ghost stories we mentioned. And are you on Letterboxd, Dirk?
I'm not.
Oh shoot!
I don't.
'Cause
I'm not on anything that rates anything. But
well, you can also just say you watched it. You don't have to give it an up or down or number. You could just say
Okay,
I watched
perfect.
that movie. But anyway, what I was going to ask request from you is I want a list of all those movies you just mentioned for the
Sure,
crazy
absolutely.
Chinese boxing hopping vampire movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Man.
But anyway, so yeah,
you can find Mr.
I
Vampire.
got a deep dive to do.
oh, that's
Yeah.
not, I was thinking the whole time, like, God damn it, now I have like 50 more movies to watch.
Yeah.
I'll be cursing your name. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank
Please
you.
comment, share, rate, all the above.
Yeah. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. See you soon.
Well, we'll see you next week with a dork
Oh,
out.
dork out.
Outs, yes.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll
Bye,
talk out with
everyone.
you next week. Bye.
Bye.